Hello, my name's Rod Simpson, and I'm going to be going through an introduction or revision, depending on how you want to think about it, for the business analysis practice exam from the BCS. So if you're thinking about taking the course, or if you've taken the course, either it's a really useful synopsis of what is going to be expected from you. First thing to say, business analysis practice is all about creating the right project. We talk about why projects fail. The number one reasons projects fail is you've got the wrong project in the first place. So business analysis practice is all about deciding which is the right project for your organization. And it breaks down into several sections. There's strategy, how the business forms its strategy. There are the stakeholders. There's understanding the current situation. There is deciding on what the future situation should be, target state. There are the design principles, coming up with new ideas. And there is the business case. Strategy. 8 questions on the exam. Stakeholders, 8 questions. Pretty well all the rest, 6 questions each. Hopefully my maths is right, gives us 40 questions in the exam. I will be doing a presentation on how to take these types of exams, especially this sort of one, which is a multiple choice, multiple question exam. Other things you need to know. Well, let's start with the strategy. What do we need to know in the strategy? Well, the place I like to start is by thinking about the SWOT, the strengths, weaknesses, opportunities, and threats. To make this happen, we need to be thinking about such things as our pestle and my Porter's 5 forces. Within my pestle and Porter's 5 forces, these are feeding into the opportunities and threats. Opportunities and threats, external sources. pestle stands for political, economic, social, technological, legal, environmental. Understanding that affects these opportunities, threats, and something could be an opportunity, other things can be threats. We've got to make sense how they relate to us and our business. Porter's 5 forces. At the center of Porter's 5 forces is our competitors, but we also need to think about how easy is it for new entrants to join the market? What are substitute products our customers could use instead? What's the buying power of our the power of our buyers and the power of our suppliers? This all feeds into our Porter's 5 forces. From the strengths and weaknesses point of view, we have our resource audit. And our VMost. I'll concentrate on our VMost in a bit. Resource audit consists of such things as our human resources, our financial resources, our physical resources we own as a business. And these are tangible resources because we can measure them, and such things as know-how and reputation. These are intangible resources. These feed into our strengths and weaknesses, along with our actual way that we're going to drive forward our strategy. Vision, mission, objectives, strategy, tactics. One vision, the reason why your company exists or where it wants to head to. One, mission, how it's going to do it. Objectives. Now, your objectives should be SMART. Specific, measurable, achievable, relevant, and timed. If they are not measurable and timed, it's not an objective. Strategy. You have many strategies feeding into your objectives, and your tactics are the projects that your business runs. So your projects make up your strategy make up your objectives feed into the mission, etc., etc. It's like one big pyramid scheme. For your strategy, you can think about several things. We can be thinking about the critical success factors or the key performance indicators. These effectively come from our objectives but feed into strategy, and even our targets. We can also lead on into our balanced scorecard, which consists of such things as our finance, our internal processes, our learning and growth, and our customer perspective. And what it means is we give these things to do that are broken in those sections. Therefore, we're having a balanced way of going forward as an organization. And that is pretty well it for our strategy. Remember, 8 questions on there. So you can pretty well guarantee there's going to be one on SWOT, one on resource audit, a couple on VMost, 4-5 forces, PESTLE, almost certainly something about your critical success factors. You need to know all of this, and you have to have an understanding behind it. What about our stakeholders? Well, within our stakeholders, and this has been an interesting one, do we do the current situation first or do we do our stakeholders first? And the answer is both. It's all happening at the same moment in time. So when we have our stakeholders, well, what is a stakeholder? Really good question. We need to understand what they are. They are either individuals or groups of people who have an interest in the outcome of the project or what you're doing, the change you're doing. So we can have our categories of stakeholders. Really good way to remember our categories is our stakeholder wheel. It has 8 spokes. And if you remember the phrase Merck Cops, it will help you know the categories. Managers, employees, regulators, customers, competitors, owners, partners, suppliers, all categories of our stakeholders. They are generic categories. We need to think about, have we thought about everyone in these categories before we blindly move on? We've got something called a RACI. Again, to do with our stakeholders. So we can do a RACI chart, which has the names of stakeholders down one side and the products they're working on, the functions they're working on the other axis, and then each of the fields is filled in either blank or with one of these. R for responsible, A for accountable, C for consulted, and I for informed. And finally, when we're talking about our stakeholders, we want to think about a way to manage them and a way to analyze them. Well, both the management and the analysis occurs on our power interest grid. So we have low, some, high, low, some, high, and we divide this up and we mark our stakeholders into this grid. That's how we analyze them. Once we have done that, we will then manage them based on the following: ignore, keep informed, keep on side, watch, keep satisfied, and actively manage. Sometimes referred to as constant active management. So that's our stakeholders. Again, you're going to get 4 or 8 questions on this. So don't be surprised if you get quite a few on that power interest grid. Both recognizing what it is, where you do things. If you get a question that says, oh, so-and-so has changed and they've changed in a way that affects their power, what's the first thing you do? And the first thing you do is you document that change in your power interest grid. We want to think about the current state. And to get at the current state, we're going to be using a whole load of techniques, sorts of things we're going to be thinking about. Interview people, workshops, observation, surveys, scenario analysis, document analysis, and data analysis. Actually, I'm going to put the last 2 pretty well together. We need to know what are both the pros and the cons for each of these. So the interviews, good for gaining rapport, good for getting at detailed information, bad because it takes time getting one person's point of view. Workshops, good for getting consensus, for getting groups of people together for their point of view. Bad, it needs to be well managed. People may dominate it, can be difficult to organize. Observation takes a lot of time, however, often used to confirm the findings up here. Our observation, getting good at also getting at tacit knowledge. We've got surveys, great where there's a large number of people, especially your customers, thinking about uncovering common issues. Time consuming, difficult to organize, difficult to get right. Scenario, what's a scenario? Scenario is where we list the steps involved in doing something, and we also include all the alternates. Oh, what if this doesn't work? And what if that doesn't work? So it's really a list of steps with the options that go, if it doesn't work, do this. So scenario analysis, very detailed, very complex, can be a problem. You can spend a lot of time doing it. Very good at uncovering tacit knowledge. And on document analysis, where we're looking at existing documents, whether existing systems, the documentation with the new system going in, the existing procedures, Excel spreadsheets people produce, etc. All this stuff goes into our document analysis. Can be very boring, can be hard work. Only actually technically gives you one person's point of view, because some people might go, oh yeah, I know it says we're supposed to do that, but actually now we do this. could be an issue. And we're going to take all this information and we're going to output it somehow. We're going to gather it together. We can output it as, because we're trying to get at this current state, a rich picture. We can put it out as a mind map. We can output it as a customer journey. Or even as an empathy map. I think there's anyone else I've got to do. I think I'll do. So this is how we gather the information, and this is how we document it. It's all to get at the current state, because we need that current state, even it's acknowledgement that we're not doing much about it at the moment. It's still a gathering of the current state. Now, in real life, some people go, oh, it's obvious where we are, Rod. And it is to them, but actually, and it is to their perspective. It might not be true of everyone, and even their perspective may not be the whole picture. So it's really good to gather that current state. Next thing we need to be thinking about is the target state, the to be. So if the current state is your as is, my target state is my to be. And really this all revolves around my BAM, my business activity model. So each of our stakeholders, whether individuals or groups, will have a CAPWO. Each of these CAPWOs will produce their own BAM, and we will then bring these BAMs together, find a consensus as an agreed, desired way to go forward. So, something to bear in mind. What is our CAPWO? Our CAPWO consists of customer, actor, transformation, worldview, owner, and environment. Our customer. Oh, well, let's talk about our transformation. Our transformation is the way the stakeholder believes the future should look like. The to be for each of these individual stakeholders. The worldview is why they believe that to be right. Oh, I believe that X, Y, that we need to do X because of Y. Well, this because of this justification for worldview. Technically, Chetland says you start with the worldview, you then do the transformation, then the rest. Customer, who's going to benefit from the transformation. Actor, who's going to do the work. Owner, who can stop or start the change internally. And environment, stuff that's outside of the control of the stakeholders that could interfere or mess up their transformation. This transformation is then put into our BAM, and our BAM consists of several parts, but we're going to talk about those main activities. Business activity model has activities. It has planning activities. It has doing activities, has enabling activities, it has monitoring activities, and it has controlling activities. And we plan to do a change. Doing actually is the change. And actually, this part we talk about relates directly to this transformation. Enabling is the stuff we need to do to make the doing happen. And then we monitor, we planned in our planning what the monitor is going to be. We then actually monitor to go, did it work? If it didn't work, we fix it. So your order is plannings lead into doings, although you start with your doings when you draw the picture. Doings lead into enabling and back into doing. Plans may even lead into enable. These both can lead into monitor, and monitor only ever leads into control. So there's sort of logical flow that's going on behind it. And this is a high level view as to how we are going to solve this problem going forward. Our target state, the to be, and our consensus band becomes our desired to be. But we've got to think about how we're going to cover this. It's not just coming up with a to be, we've got to find a route to get that to be. But acknowledge, yes, this is where we want to be. Is it feasible to do that? Let's think about that. And we do that in our design and thinking and coming up with our defined solution. Several things we're going to think about. Design thinking itself. Solution. In our design thinking, what do? We go through several stages. We empathize. We define the problem. We ideate. We prototype. We evaluate, and we create. First, we need to empathize with our customer or whoever we're doing this with. What are their problems? What are their difficulties? This leads into us defining what problem we're trying to solve. This then leads on to either going, we still don't understand our customer. Let's go back and empathize some more. Or let's generate a whole load of ideas. We're going to be looking at, in a few moments, at our design thinking. First for our single diamond. Sorry, that's gone well off. And secondly, for our double diamond version. When we generate these ideas, we could go, we still don't know what the problem is, or let's go back and think about this. Or we can move on to prototyping. When we prototype, again, we can go back to any of these other layers, or we can move on to evaluate. And again, with the evaluation, we can go back. You get the idea. So you have to have gone through all these stages within your design thinking. It doesn't necessarily happen in a set order. We need to think about our gap analysis, because the idea is we're looking at what the difference is between the as is and the to be. So our gap is looking at the as is, define the as is, define the to be, examine the differences, which gives you gaps to be solved, which gives us a way to resolve or to bridge these gaps. And these are our gap analysis. So we're going to use this to help solve these gaps. The ideation directly relates to our design thinking. So first, when we're encountering our design thinking, we think about discovery. We come up with as many ideas as possible, and then we start defining in more detail. And it's sometimes called the double diamond, because when you create your business case, you discover and then define, and then eventually when it is going live, you develop, or before it goes live, and as you develop, you eventually deliver. Refer to it as your double diamond. We also need to talk about feasibility. What we talk about feasibility for, well, we're thinking about when we're looking at these gaps, the way to solve these gaps. Are these feasible from a financial point of view? From a business perspective? Does it fit the business? Is it right for our culture, etc.? Is it going to be fast enough? And from a technical point of view? All of these should be things we should be thinking about when we're coming to this. Oh, I just remember I forgot to talk about one thing on my target state. So let's actually wipe this and mention about the one thing I forgot to mention on the target state. Within our BAMs, we also look at our triggers or events. So if you see the word trigger, basically means the same thing as an event. So what do I mean by a trigger or an event? These technically should be logged in your BAM. Three types of triggers or events. There's an internal trigger, an external, and a timed trigger. So any of these things can kick your activities into starting. Finally, we have our business case. And we need to go, what goes into our business case? Well, several key things. There is an introduction. There's a management summary. There is the current situation. We will have our options. There are going to be a number of options. One of the options is always going to be do nothing. How many other options? 3 or so. For each option, we need several bits of information. We need a description. We need a cost and benefit. We need impacts. And we need some risks. And finally, we need recommendations. Sorry if I put any misspelling up there. I am dyslexic. Let's look at these costs and benefits. Costs and benefits, we're going to take and look at both of them and divide them into tangible i.e. costs and benefits we can give a figure for, we can work out. Intangible, we are effectively going to take and ignore the intangible and take the tangible only and create an investment appraisal. And that investment appraisal will either be payback or it will be the discounted cash flow. Payback is all about which date do we break even, i.e. which date does our benefits exceed our costs. So it's all about giving a date, usually in years. For our discounted cash flow, money loses value. As money loses value, we want a rate that it loses the value at, and we need to calculate the fact that money in 4 years' time is not worth the same as it is today. So we will end up with a net present value, NPV. We need to look at something like the risks. For our risks, we need a description. We need an impact. We need a probability. We need owner and a counter measure, which could be something like accept, avoid, mitigate, transfer. Every one of our risks will have this sort of information, or the major risks. Really good idea. Last thing I just want to point out, our business change life cycle, add IR or add IR, align, define, design, implement, and realize. This is our business change life cycle. Alignment leads to definition of the problem, definition leads to design solution, implementation, design leads to implementation, implementation to realize, which now gives you a new business situation, which you now can be looking at again. At the center of all of this is my business case. That's why that is important there. And that really is it for our BAP, our business analysis practice. So you can use this as a bit of revision. You can use it as a quick summary before you learn the course to understand what you're going to be tackling. If you're interested in a discount on this or other courses I teach, I will be attaching, and hopefully it will come up below, an email address that you can send off to me and say, hey Rod, please send me your discounted code for whichever suppliers you're dealing with. If you're interested in 20 multiple choice questions that are not part of the already ones given out by the BCS, again, message me on the email and I will send you 20 multiple choice questions and their answers, so you can then practice this exam ready for when you take the real one. I hope that has been useful. Thank you very much.